You're listening to Mr. Liverpool himself, Frank Carlyle, exclusively on Mersey Radio.
Good evening, everybody. I was just writing down what I was going to say right now, but having said that, it's just good evening to everybody, and especially around the world who are tuning in to Frank Carlyle and Mersey Radio. And tonight we've got a wealth of everything. It's absolutely brilliant. To my left, I have here, right next to me, the wonderful Mr. Paul Kappa.
Good evening, everybody. I hope you're well at home.
And right facing me, we have the man from Cambridge, of all places.
It used to be Uncle.
See, he won't let me finish. And this is what we was talking about before, me and Kappa. We was saying, he never lets us finish. Anyway, who we have, and you heard the little...
Don't let him... He's always interrupting, Frank. Don't let him do that.
That's unbelievable. Anyway.
Frank, you forgot to put your hand up to say you'd finished talking.
Anyway.
Hi, everyone.
Yeah, that was Gilchrist. He just came in and said, hi, everyone. Anyway, and right next to Ed is a wonderful, wonderful guest of mine, and she's great, and I see her all the time. And she's a member of the amazing Kappa band, and she's the drummer, and no less than Laura Gilchrist.
Hello.
Oh, wasn't that gentle and everything else? No, that was lovely.
Whisper and Bob there.
Breathing in like a zephyr.
That's what I mean. She's not like that on stage, is she? She's beating away at them drums and everything. And fine singer, by the way. A fine singer, might I add. So, she's not that quiet, people, and she'll be joining in and what we're talking about tonight. And what we're talking about tonight is conspiracy theories, because on the show we have Professor David Johnson all the way from Colorado, which is absolutely brilliant. So we'll be talking about that. We'll also be talking to none other than Ayshea Brough. We'll be talking to Ayshea Brough, one of the stars of UFO, and a wonderful... I used to, do you know what, Paul? Like when I first seen her, I used to fancy her like mad. I'm going, Ayshea Brough. But, because she's been on before, and we'll be talking to her more about UFO, and if she's got any, or involved in any conspiracy theories and whatever.
Do you think she's heard you saying that you fancied her? She might be doing a hair special now for you.
Yes, she might just be. I actually proposed to her.
Did you?
On her, yeah. And she said, well, not quite yet. Whatever that means, not quite yet.
Well, anyway. There's hope for you.
I know. There's hope yet. But, listen, boys, what do you think of the weather?
We're having some great weather at the moment, aren't we, Frank? And it's been real up and down, and there's been very, very cold times. And somebody asked me today on Facebook what I thought about global warming, and I said, I don't really know, but it's hot today.
Well, listen, I don't understand anything about global warming, and that's being honest. And I don't think I'm a complete and utter idiot, because I don't know what it means. Also, football, and are you all panicking over... Are you all panicking over Liverpool not signing anybody?
No, there's no reason to panic about anything, is there? We're just going to go into a new season, and it'd be the same thing as where they say, what's your team going to be? They'll say same as last year.
Only better.
Yeah.
Well, okay. Now we've signed Salah. Yeah. Now you're all Reds. We've signed Salah. Do you think there's anyone else coming in?
Yeah.
Who? Have you got any idea? Well, I'll tell you who's coming in. And I got this from the horse's mouth last Friday. And it's mine. It's my phone keeps going.
That's
and I keep getting messages. And it's a fellow by the name of Niall Garrity.
That's a good name.
All the way from Ireland, the Republic of Ireland. Niall, I used to call him Neil. He used to laugh, so it's not Neil, it's Niall. It's Neil, who's that? Don't forget that it's written, the written word. Anyway, it's Niall Garrity, and he said, never mind, it's not a conspiracy theory, is it, that we're signing Van Dijk and Kiter, and there's a player coming in that's going to be a big jaw-dropping signing. Besides those two lads, how about that?
I thought you nearly said a big Geordie before you said dropping.
we've had
I was
him.
worried there.
Yeah, we've had him.
I thought you were going to get Andy Carroll back.
Yeah, Andy Carroll back, yeah. But anyway, you know, this...
Luis Suarez coming back.
How did you guess that? Genuine.
Someone said, no,
Well,
it's just a mad guess, isn't it?
Because you mentioned
He
jaw.
said jaw.
Yeah.
Well, jaw drop. Well, yeah, you know.
Jaw chomping signing.
Yeah. Well, what I believe and what I've been told, that the jaw dropping signing, and this will be out of this world if we, you know.
I'm watching me jaw.
Neymar.
You're kidding?
No, not kidding at all.
So I was close with Suarez then.
You was very close. That's why I thought, wow, you know, because I said that myself personally. I said that Mbappe, you know, the French lad, and he went, no, he said, Neymar. I said, oh, behave yourself. And he said, well, when you think about it, it was all in the papers, and we were all saying, he's tapping, remember, the best of mates, by the way. And he said, everyone said he's tapping him up. Coutinho is being tapped up by Neymar, but it's the other way about.
Mm-hmm.
How about that? Not incredible.
So Neymar said to him, come to Barcelona.
Come
to Barcelona.
And
Coutinho says no. And he's giving in, and he's because he wants to be with Coutinho.
But I said to this particular person, I said, well, listen, if he's going to come, who's going to pay his wages? And do you know what he says? And when you think about it, you're going to be right. What do you think? How he's going to pay his wages?
He's going to play for nothing because he loves it.
Well, okay. What do you
think? I would. That's what I'd do.
Wouldn't you? Yeah.
I'm still waiting for them to call me.
So was I.
You know, I thought when Alan Hansen left, I'll slot in. I thought I'd just slot in a centre back, and it just didn't happen in that way. But
I mean, you could do things like play guitar while you're shooting pens, couldn't you?
Yeah, I mean, partly because I'm rubbish.
Half-time show.
Well, who's going to pay him then?
Well, okay, I'll tell you now what's going to be paid for his wages.
Image rights.
The shirts.
Yeah, the shirts.
You know, with his name on. That's how it's going to be. And you think
with his Neymar.
Neymar on it, yeah. Neymar.
Fab.
Isn't that great?
Well, I'll not hold my breath.
No, don't hold your breath. Not for the other two lads, but there is going to be a massive. That's going to shake the foundations of the Premiership.
And
imagine that'll be Neymar.
Whoever it is will have to use Nivea, won't they?
Well,
because that's the deal, isn't it? You've got to appear in a Nivea advert, haven't you? You're going to I use this cream on my face because it helps me play football.
Well, anyway, what I'm going to do, we're going to do these conspiracy theories, okay? And with the conspiracy theories...
Neymar wasn't a conspiracy theory.
Well, no, don't be going down there now.
All right.
That's not a conspiracy theory. We're Liverpool supporters, so we can't afford to
behave yourself,
Kappa.
Just believe, all right.
Just believe. Well, fact. Anyway, what people don't tend to do is not differentiate between conspiracy and theory. You've got to separate them. You have to separate them. And that's the idea of conspiracy theories, and differentiate between fact as well, because people just take it as gospel about some of these particular theories. Now, my idea is this: every time I give a lecture, I always say, like, it's the First World War, or, you know, anything else about the Romans, you know, the invasion, the Claudian invasion of AD 43. And what I give a preamble, shall we say, of why. Because no matter how you look at invasions or whatever, there's always a motive, there's always a reason that you've got to do it. You can't just go into another country and take over. You can't do it. It's against everything. Everything it's against. Even the likes of Mark Antony, when Cleopatra said, "Do you want to rule Rome and here?" Right? And he said, yeah, that'll do me. That's Egypt. So he has a motive, he has a reason. The likes of Claudius, for example, he wasn't a military leader. He never belonged to any sort of military personnel. He wasn't from a military background at all. And the Romans only liked military leaders to protect them. And he had to have a military victory behind him. And I'm talking about a big one. The only country that wasn't had been invaded and not conquered was Britain. So there was a fella by the name of Whitaker who came over to Rome, and they were what you call a client kingdom, these particular tribe. And he came over and he said, there's two brothers named Caractacus and Togidogmus, and they've taken over my kingdom. Can you do something about it to get it back? That gave them the motive to invade. Hence the Claudian invasion, AD 43. So, leading up to what's happening, because this is what Ed, Paul Kappa, and the lovely Laura will be talking about, and myself, is the 9/11 conspiracy. That's what we'll be talking about. We don't know what David Johnson's conspiracy theory is, but we'll be talking to him later on, and we'll be talking about his conspiracy theory. But, I think a lot of other conspiracy theories will be coming into it, because once a month we're having a show dedicated to conspiracy theories, which I find very interesting indeed. Anyway, to preamble this particular thing up to 9/11, what you've got to think of is the Middle East, ever since the birth of Christ, shall we say, has always been an interest. Ever since, like, the apostles went out and given their, gospels according to whoever. And then you had the Crusades with the ethnic cleansing during the Middle Ages. Then right up to the 19th century, when machines became a prominent part of technology. What machines had to have was oil. So therefore they said, well, where do we get oil from? The Middle East. So they all went over to the Middle East, and this is where it all began. Then all of a sudden what we had was that these people were just living in harmony, so to speak. They were living in harmony in the Middle East. No matter how you look at it, they were living in harmony. But the 20th century defined everything about the Middle East. Everything. And what it was, when you come up to, like, have you any idea when the CIA was formed? Have you any idea? Well, I'll tell you.
Early 20th century.
Okay, I'll tell you when it was. It was during the Second World War when Roosevelt got this group of people together, and then they started whatever they did, the CIA, Central Intelligence Agency. So they started doing whatever, their little spying and everything else. But it wasn't until Harry S. Truman decided to give them office block and say, well, yeah, there you are. Now, all we know about the CIA is what you see on films. And when you see them walking through that wonderful marble floor with a massive big round thing saying Central Intelligence Agency, so that's how we know that there's a Central Intelligence Agency, but what they get up to as well. Now, there's so many people saying that they're not really as successful as people make them out to be, but they're just bullies. That's all they are. This is what people say. Anyway, what had happened was, it was from this particular movement of the 40s coming right into the 50s, and they were always meddling somewhere, the CIA. But the FBI didn't like them. Did you know that? There was lots of controversy between the CIA and the FBI. And don't forget that the police, the ordinary police, are not interested in the FBI either, because they go in and say, well, this has been taken over the state line, so we're becoming involved, and they are
out of your jurisdiction.
Exactly, and that's so they're all at loggerheads even today with each other. So whether they're looking after the the interest of the public or just themselves, I don't know. So this is like leading up, and what had happened was in 1957. there was geologists. Now, I'm gone. Geologists just look at stones. Am I right, Ed? Well, that's what a geologist does.
I've watched the Stones once or twice.
Well, there you go, you say. I've never seen the Stones. But, having said that, so geology, you know, they were in Iraq, a place called Iraq, and they were looking at this thing, and then all of a sudden, they found massive deposits of what?
Black stuff.
Black stuff. Oil. Now, geologists find them black stuff now, so there must have been someone else there. So what they did, they decided to annex Iraq and call it Kuwait. The Americans, the British and the French. Right? So, by the 70s comes up, we had that awful thing of the hostages being taken in Iran. Iran. Because in the early 70s, the CIA put on, the Peacock Throne came about, the Shah of Persia, Iran, because they are Persians, Iran is Persia.
That's right, yeah.
So he was back on the throne, and as the, what they said, the fundamentalist decadence came back to Iran, we didn't want this. Anyway, the Shah was put on by the CIA. You had the Saddam Hussein put in charge of Iraq by the CIA, right? You had Gorbachev in Afghanistan, and the Americans said, well, hang on, what are you doing there? He said, well, do you want to take over? He said, yeah, okay. He said, this is the Americans. So the Americans went into Afghanistan and trained the Mujahideen, who are Al-Qaeda. So they trained them, and these are the fighters today that are, the enemy of the United States of America. So this is, it all gets confused. Then all of a sudden, the Americans coerced Mr. Hussein, Saddam that is, to go and fight in Iran, all because of, the Iranians, all because of the hostages, because it was a sheer mess. It was a sheer mess, so they became terrible enemies of the Americans. They became number one enemy, the nation. So therefore, Saddam Hussein went in. Now, you can imagine, this is like terrorists. They said, well, Saddam Hussein must have said, well, listen, what's in it for me if I go and fight, Iran? Go to war with Iran. And what it is, now, I don't know whether you're aware of this, but ever since, 1798 or whatever, 1798, Spain have been negotiating through diplomacy and everything else for Gibraltar. So when are you going to give us it back? We're in the 21st century. You're talking 1798 here. So it does take a long time. So Saddam Hussein, they reckon that got fed up waiting for Kuwait to go back into Iraqis' hands, because, as he said, Kuwait is not Kuwait. You just made that name up. It's a part of my country. It's Iraq. So therefore, instead of waiting, saying, well, he went in, tried to take it, and that started the Gulf War. So the first Gulf War with Storm and Norman and everybody else, got rid of Saddam Hussein, and he went back. So everything was, he's okay then.
There's some curious things, Frank, isn't there? Like Bin Laden, which is another conspiracy theory, if you like, in itself. But you've got Bin Laden, who was really against the invasion of Kuwait, and was begging the Saudi government to stand against it. Because, and he himself had been part of the Mujahideen, who had been trained up by the Americans, and was, had a big connection to America with his family, very rich family, and so it's very, very complicated, that, because he's begging them not to have these foreign troops on his soil, which would be very against the grain of what anybody there wanted, and yet they still, as you said, that pretext of inviting the Americans to come in, which is a large part of the fall of Russia, wasn't it, at the time?
Well, this is it.
Or the USSR, I beg your pardon.
The USSR. Well, once Gorbachev came in, that was the end. The walls came down, everything came down, which was absolutely brilliant. But the point is, The likes of Afghanistan, was pivotal for what had happened. It really was. Even today, it's pivotal for what had happened, because no matter who's there, whether it's the Americans, whether it's the British, whether it's even the Russians at that time, they didn't want to be there. They said, "Yeah, you go and you fight these people if you want." But what is Afghanistan? What is it? I don't like saying it. I'm not saying like it's a nothing country, because people live there and they're very proud Afghanistanians. But having said that, the first Gulf War, and then it led up to the second Gulf War, which brought about the downfall of Saddam Hussein. Now the point is 9/11. Now you've got Saddam Hussein and the weapons of mass destruction. Hans Blix went into Iraq, and he was supposed to find them, and he pleaded with the Allies, there's no weapons of mass destruction. What are you going in for? Why are you going in? And then the propaganda started by saying, well, listen, he's gassed people. He's done this, he's done that. There's a recording of Saddam Hussein, and he was saying, get all the people out of, the Kurds who were gassed, supposedly gassed by him. Well, that's left open to debate who actually gassed them, whether it was Saddam Hussein or whether it was an enemy of the Kurds.
That would be a false flag then.
That would be a false flag.
And that also echoes exactly what's happening in Syria now.
It sounds a lot like Syria.
Because the same thing has been said. I mean, we've got our foreign secretary who's pretty much saying, he's constantly saying, saying this is a fact that these people have been gassed, but there's other possibilities. But you see, if you countenance another possibility, you're a conspiracy theorist.
That's right. Well, this is it, and this is why we have to differentiate between theory and conspiracy. You've got to do that, no matter how. You can't combine the two of them together. Anyway, David Johnson, our professor from Colorado, he's actually listening in, so he mightn't be talking about the 9/11 conspiracy. So let's go straight over to David. Hello, David.
Hello, Liverpool. How are you tonight?
Oh, we're fantastic, David. I didn't know that you were listening in. Jason just handed me this note saying the prof is listening in.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, David, I've got Paul Kappa here, who's a great musician and very well known throughout the world, by the way. And his lovely drummer, Laura Gilchrist, and another guest of mine who's Ed Gilchrist, a dad. And they're looking forward to this show. So what are you going to talk about tonight?
Well, you've got quite a bit of groundwork set up for the whole 9/11 thing, haven't you? So let's just keep going with that.
Okay.
I mean,
you're satisfied with that then?
Yeah. Oh yeah, I mean, you've covered quite a lot of territory while I was listening, and I want to just back up for just a minute, because you were talking about the all the background and the Iranian hostage situation. I mean, that was really a tense moment here, but there's a conspiracy theory hidden in that one too, and I'm sure you're familiar with it.
Yeah.
But the idea is that we're coming up to an election year, and it was President Jimmy Carter versus Ronald Reagan, and so Carter tried to initiate a military rescue mission. You probably know that.
Yeah, that's right.
And the conspiracy is that whether it was from Reagan or whether it was just the Department of Defense, the military knew that Reagan would boost defense spending, so they allegedly sabotaged the helicopters on the rescue mission, so they all crashed. They took the dust filters off of the engines on the helicopters, and you're flying in a desert without a dust filter, you're not going to fly for very long. So, and that contributed to, at least the conspiracy goes, that contributed to Reagan getting elected. And of course, the very day that President Ronald Reagan took the oath of office, here come the hostages, because, well, there you go. So it's funny, all these little bits that come together, and it does all lead up to, that 9/11 event.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's absolutely true, that, because you can say about the crashing and everything else, and it's that these people, these pilots and whoever was in the soldiers who were ever in those helicopters, there must have been something wrong. There must have been something wrong, because they would have had weather forecast, they would have had everything, and to go and crash in a storm, I think is a bit ludicrous, to be honest. David, you've got to understand that we know all about this, in this country as well. At the time in the 70s with Jimmy Carter, because I believe the British actually said to them, "We'll go in with you," the SAS, and they said, "No, it's an American thing, and the Americans will do it. Thank you very much." So we left the SAS out of it.
Well, that's the whole American exceptionalism. We're going to do it all ourselves. One of that thing. So.
Yeah, well, this is it. I know it's daft and everything else, but having said that's a fantastic thing. But leading up to the 9/11, now there's Ed Gilchrist, and Ed Gilchrist is an engineer, Cambridge educated, so he learnt all his engineering in Cambridge, no less, and he was actually at a big reunion, a 50th anniversary reunion, only last week or the week before, and he met all these other wonderful people, and he was actually talking, and the people were talking about the 9/11 conspiracy theory. And I'm going to bring in Ed, and being an engineer and looking at the actual buildings. What's your take on them?
Hi, David. It's Ed. I should start by just saying a couple of preambles about conspiracy theories, because we have to be very careful and sensitive to the fact that unless these things are a hoax, and what we saw in 9/11 was no hoax, those buildings really came down and people were really in those buildings. I'm not entirely sure about all the planes, but I'm absolutely sure about the buildings coming down. And so, we can't say things tonight which says, the buildings never went down and all this other stuff.
Oh, they did go down.
And people died. And families...
3,000 of them.
Yeah, many, many people died. So I just want to start by saying we're not going to say things which are totally ridiculously insensitive to the families and friends of those people.
No.
Absolutely.
Okay, so it definitely was no hoax in that respect. But the question, I guess, is, was it a false flag? But... I've been pulling off loads of stuff. I started by looking at the stories on the internet, which are the debunking websites and the debunking stories from a number of different sites. And if I can just read out what the beginning of one of the particular websites that talks about debunking, it starts by saying, psychologists will tell you that even perfectly sane people have the ability to accept wild conspiracy theories. The more powerless or alone we feel, the more likely we are to develop such theories. It's all linked to self-esteem, it says. If you're the sort of person who feels isolated or disenfranchised, you're much more likely to develop wild theories as a way of making you seem more knowledgeable, more powerful, more special. So straight away there's a put down to anyone who actually questions the given word. So because I question, I guess I'm a lonely, lacking in confidence, lacking in self-esteem individual. So that's how some of these things start.
You're just trying to make yourself sound clever, aren't you, Ed?
I am.
You've been to Cambridge, have you?
Yeah. So and when I was sat with these guys last week, it's a good introduction that Frank gave just then, because it was quite relevant that I was sat with some of these guys in our dicky bows and our tuxedos and over dinner, and suddenly one of them says, "So what do you think about 9/11 then?" And I don't know why it came up, and I just tried to ask them challenging questions, because no one around the table thought that it was a conspiracy. But I wasn't sitting with engineers. I was sitting with art graduates and psychologists and doctors and people like that, all very bright people, but they'd never really looked into it, because he just took the word of the establishment. So I asked them a couple of questions, And the thing that came back to me was the consistent question of, but why would they do this? You know, it can't be true, because I cannot think of a logical reason why a sovereign government would take the lives of its own people. They didn't need to do that, to go into Iraq for oil and all those things. Surely not. So I said to them, I'm not interested in motives when I first look at these things. As an engineer, I'm interested in the evidence. I look at what happened, and if I can't see a reasonable explanation scientifically as to why buildings collapsed, or why the Pentagon, side of the Pentagon went in and there were no lampposts taken down by a flying plane at 20 feet off the ground at 500 miles an hour, and why there only seems to be a couple of bits of shiny metal lying around on the lawn in front. And I ask myself, how can this happen? How can you engineer machines to do this? I just forget the fact that it may be hard to get a motivation behind it. Because at the end of the day, if the fact is that science can't explain it, then you have to find something else to explain it. And then you start looking in other places. And one of the places that you do look very closely at is the money. There's a fantastic website called, I think it's a YouTube video, which is about an hour long. It's done very sensibly and scientifically, but it's actually just called Follow the Money. And they don't look at the buildings. They look at they don't look at Iran, Iraq, oil. They don't look at those things. They just look at the money that was exchanging hands before, during, and after the 9/11 event. And David, I'm sure you've read all of that stuff.
So what's your take on that particular point that Ed's making, David?
Well, a couple thoughts, actually. I am familiar with some of the economic arguments about the amount of evidence, I guess, that's available, particularly in some cases even for the airlines themselves, and what was in play. And so certainly, I'm not going to discount that. I think, though, you've got two things going on there. One certainly is the World Trade Center issues, and though you've got pretty good videotape of the second crash and a lot of evidence there. You're talking a lot more about the Pentagon. Are you referencing the idea that it was a missile strike? Is that what you're talking about?
I don't want to actually say what it was, because I think that I don't have evidence to say that something struck it. I have evidence that says something blew up explosively.
Could you be saying that it was actually planted inside the Pentagon?
I don't know. You see, I look at the evidence that says that was a building that was the most heavily video-guarded building in the entire world. And not a single piece of video evidence has come out of anything going anywhere near that building. Except I think someone who was standing nearby with a camera got something that they thought was moving. And then the official story has used that piece of, I think, was public domain video. I think I'm right in that, aren't I, David? But the Pentagon, to me, is a big question about how that happened, because of scientific things around aeroplanes and low-level speed flying, damage, collateral damage, bits found on the garden in front, and the fact that it took so long for that site to be cleared for people who were other than Secret Service agents to be nearby.
Well, but don't you think that the likes of the Twin Towers, that's the economic heart, shall we say, of all America, right there and then. But not only that, but the Pentagon is the heartbeat of national security.
But Frank, you could use that as an argument for the Bin Laden story, that Al-Qaeda was behind it, because that would be the way to disrupt the West. So you could easily use that argument as a motivation for the official story. That doesn't mean... Sorry, David, go on.
If I weigh in on that for a second, because, the World Trade Center was a previous target as well in 1992.
Yeah.
It was really... it was a dominant visible sort of icon of American capitalism. So that in and of itself is, I mean, that's a big target, if you will. If you're looking for a target, that's that. I guess, I mean, this is as much circumstantial as anything else, but it seems to me, and this is drawing from memory, because of course I remember the attacks as well as you do, or we both have memories anyway. I don't know if yours are better than mine. They might well be at this point. But I seem to remember seeing quite a bit of plane wreckage around the Pentagon when I was watching the coverage. Am I misremembering? Now it was all aerial footage that was taken obviously well after the actual moment. But am I misremembering?
The wreckage that I saw didn't look like it had suffered any kind of conflagration. We're talking about, again, lots of fuel going up. You'd expect bits lying around would have had some evidence of conflagration. And some of these pieces look like someone had just taken bits of old metal from the Boeing factory and given it a bit of a whacking with a hammer. Also, we have this business about the hole in the side of the Pentagon was 76 foot wide or something, and the argument for that was that because it wasn't 180 foot, whatever the width of a Boeing, was it 757? They said, people were arguing, well, it couldn't have been a plane because it didn't actually make a hole the width of the wings, and the argument back to that was a very sensible one that says, this is not some cartoon where the plane makes its own image in the side of a building that it goes through. And I had to laugh at that because the opposite argument is being given in the official story for the hole in the side of the World Trade Center, because that does look like it's a cartoon image of a plane going through the side of it. You have got the full width of the wing, and we're talking here of steel frame, each piece of steel 14-inch thick, 14 foot high, made in triple units that are 14 foot high, all the way around the building, and you've got a plane with quite flimsy wings, travelling at speed, admittedly, full of fuel, hitting the side of that. And
don't you think that it was a spread though as well?
Well, the thing is, what I'm saying there is that the argument for the Pentagon hole not being wide, and the argument for it is a concrete building, of course, the Pentagon, and the argument for the World Trade Center being the full width of the wing, it doesn't stack up. Okay, I can see you damaging the side of a World Trade Center to the width of the wing as it hits, and you would see that damage on the side of the building. Why would you not see the damage on the side of the Pentagon? I don't really know.
David, it's very tough, for what, to come out with a fact piece of evidence about this particular explosion that has happened at the Pentagon. But what about the building behind the Twin Towers? Because that was emptied. Have you, David? Have you ever heard of an ex-CIA agent, female, called Susan Landau?
I don't recognise the name. Are you talking about the building that collapsed?
Yeah,
Building 7.
Yeah, Building 7. So, you're a structural engineer. Maybe you can speak to this, because a lot of the conspiracy about the Twin Towers issue has to do with whether or not, the big line is jet fuel can't melt steel beams. Okay, fine. One thought, though, is, and I'm not an engineer, so I'm going to preface everything I'm about to say with that, okay? But my understanding, limited though it is when you build these high-rise constructions, you're really very carefully balancing a lot of physical forces kind of against each other in that structure. And so it doesn't take a lot of damage to really critically threaten the integrity of that structure. And so something I read recently talking about, you don't have to melt the steel beams, that steel starts to lose structural integrity once it's heated above 1100 degrees Fahrenheit. And so that's, if you heat a building with fire long enough that it's going to threaten the structural integrity, gravity is a really harsh mistress.
Yeah, I think I hear conspiracy theorists will argue, things like both buildings went down. It's a miracle that one building came down to the ground, but with two going down, that's proof. They would say that something was going on. But I would say, well, discount the second one, because if the first one goes down for structural reasons, then the second one might go down for the same reason. So, it's not a coincidence that the second one goes down for the same reason as the first one, because they were built identically, weren't they? So discount that as a conspiracy, as evidence of a conspiracy. We should just look at one building at a time. And Building 7. Building 7 was constructed differently from Buildings 1 and 2.
Concrete.
It was Building 7 is a totally steel frame building. It has steel pylons right through the middle of it. I think from the 7th floor upwards, though, the internal structure of the steel was slightly different from the lower floors. I think they had 2 or 3. I think it was 3 main cores in the middle of Building 7. Obviously, there were other steel frames around the edge of that, but there were 3 main cores in the middle. And the argument for Building 7 coming down was that one of those cores was weakened by internal fires that had started from diesel engines in the lower floors exploding. I think that's the current official story, and those fires were started, and they weakened one of those cores of the 3 to such a degree that the other 2 couldn't take the distributed load of the whole building above it, and it all collapsed. Now, that's a nice story for someone who's not actually been to school, and that's why most of the people in the world want to just beat you up for saying that that's a complete load of waffle. What they need to do is look at what happened to the building. What actually happened was not what I would expect to happen to a building where, even if we accept that one of the cores was weakened, even if we accept that the other 2 couldn't take the distributed load, which I actually cannot believe, it couldn't take the distributed load of at least a third or half of the building. That's what engineers do. They make things really, really strong. And even if you accept that those things went, you wouldn't see it go down at free fall. After the first second or 2 of the top beginning to dip, it went down in about 3.5 seconds to the 18th floor, which is the visible site, and that was effectively free fall. Where the building was accelerating to the ground under gravity. The only way a building can accelerate to the ground under gravity if there's no resistance below it. No resistance. Zero resistance. You put a brick underneath the floor going down, that's some resistance. You put another floor underneath the floor going down, that's a lot of resistance. You put walls in place, which you've still got steel frame in there, underneath those floors coming down, that's resistance. In my view, there's no way whatsoever that building could have free fallen with the remaining structure that they haven't said was burnt and weakened. With the remaining structure in place, it could not have fallen freely to the ground the way it did.
Well, what do you think of that, David?
Well, I'm not in a position to try and counteract somebody with an engineering degree. I guess what I find myself wondering is it seems implausible that you would structure willful destruction the way. I mean, if you're going to blow something up, blow it all up at once. But again, I'm just thinking in terms of human nature, I suppose. I wonder, something that was on my mind this morning as I was getting ready is something that you were actually talking about with that psychology statement you read.
Yeah.
Go on. Have we lost him?
Are you there?
You dropped out a minute there. So that,
Yeah.
Go ahead.
It's okay, we're back. Go on.
Sorry about that. But I've been thinking a little bit about the psychology of a lot of these different conspiracies in the sense of it's become, I don't trust the government. That you cannot trust the government to tell you the truth. And that's interesting to me, because I wonder just where some of that comes from. I mean, I think some of it's always been there. You think about the American Henry David Thoreau talking about if a man comes to my door and says, "I'm from the government, I'm here to help, I'm going to run." And that's in the 19th century. But it seems to be much, much worse in the latter part of the 20th century. And I'm not going to ask, is the government that implausible? But what's driving that, too? That so many people say, no, they're not going to tell you.
I'll take that to begin with before the others come in on that, if I may, David.
Yeah.
And it's a nice, simple quote, if you like. It doesn't answer your question, but it basically says, I picked this up off the internet, and someone was trying to define what a conspiracy theorist was. And one of the answers was, a conspiracy theorist is someone who doesn't believe a known liar. And, so if you've got people like Bush, who went a little bit later into Iraq under false pretenses, and everyone knows that it was false pretenses now. And so we all know that he has the capability of lying in a big way to the entire world. And actually now we see him brush it off like it doesn't matter. Okay, so I didn't tell the truth, but you're not going to get me. And so he's a known liar. And clearly people around him are liars along with that, by association with him. So why should we believe everything he said about 9/11 from a couple of years earlier? So many people have said, why would we believe? A conspiracy theorist is someone who doesn't believe a known liar. That seems like a fair description to me. I mean, there's a lot more than that to be said. But that's one good reason to disbelieve the story that we get from government.
Okay, but at that point then, I fear that you're facing an abyss, because how does one distinguish between? Do we just assume that it's all lies? I mean, and that opens up the whole.
I think, David, I understand what you're saying, and you're absolutely right. I think the danger with conspiracy theorists who, let's say, the traditional conspiracy theorists, people like to put tin hats on them in cartoons and call them silly names. That's not what we are, and so not all things that go badly, that look like atrocities in the world, are down to false flag conspiracy.
But do you believe in cover-ups, David and Ed?
Oh, sure. I mean, Ed's quite right that the second Iraqi war, the second Gulf War, was built on false pretenses. There's no question. And certainly that there's American history, I think probably global history, is rife with the possibility of the cover-up. I mean, you can look at the American actions in Vietnam and the illegal actions that were taking place in Cambodia and Laos, and that was covered. So you've got data to support it. What I'm hearing is not just assuming that everything must be false, and that's.
I think you're right, David. I think I started a few minutes ago by saying I tend not to start with motivations. I tend not to start with judgments. I look at science. I look at what we have as evidence. And okay, I've got to say the evidence has been very quickly covered up from 9/11. Most of the evidence that I would like to see was quickly whizzed away. So forensic evidence on ground zero just disappeared. But you look at the evidence of video evidence and some testimony, although testimony I start to be concerned about both sides of testimony, but physical evidence, video evidence, is enough for me to doubt, to challenge the official story when it came out. And so when you then find out that the person who's behind that official story then starts to lie to us about weapons of mass destruction in Iraq a couple of years later, I start to say to myself, maybe he was lying then. Maybe that's an entire lie, because I could not explain through science why those buildings collapsed the way they did. I couldn't explain how the Pentagon was hit by an aeroplane flying at 20 feet at 500 miles an hour. I couldn't explain a number of things. The plane that disappeared in a field in Pennsylvania, was it? I can't remember exactly where that was. Yeah. Turned upside down. They made a film about it. Turned upside down and burrowed into the ground so deep no one can find any of it. So there are many things that are difficult to explain. If we didn't believe later that we were faced with known liars, I might have just let that go. But you see what I'm saying, David? There's enough doubt in the 9/11 story from a scientific point of view for you to look back on it and say, hey, it's possible they were lying. Then let someone else come up with some motivations.
Well, can I come in there? Because I mentioned a lady, she's an ex-CIA agent called Susan Landor. And I watched her on YouTube, and she gave this seminar. And during the seminar, she came out and said, these, I don't know, it just came out and said everything about what has happened, about 9/11, that everyone knew that it was going to happen. And she was warned by her cousin, who was a member of the White House staff, to say, do not go to New York, right, on the 11th of September. Do not go there. She said, why? He said, do not go. Something's going, catastrophic. Thank you, Ed, the man from Cambridge. Did you know what that word was, David? Catastrophic.
You wouldn't know, David. You clearly weren't at Cambridge, like.
No.
Come on, Frank.
Anyway, something catastrophic's going to happen. So she gave out all this detail, and yet she was going, and her job was to talk to Iraqi diplomats about Saddam Hussein, what's his role in everything, because they were geared up for war. This is going back to 1999, yet this is in 2001. She was 2003 saying do not go, to New York on the 11th. And she said, but it's my job.
I think there's certainly what I'm familiar with, and again, I don't claim to have a complete picture, but what I'm familiar with is that certainly there was an intelligence. There was a lot of data suggesting somebody had picked this day, something was going to happen. Now, I don't know if you want to talk about evidence, knowing, okay, there's something that's going to happen and knowing the nature of and the source of that something are two different things. I mean, that's... Do you see what I'm saying? I'm not making myself very clear.
Yeah.
The data community had evidence to say, okay, on this date, there is something bad going to happen, don't be here. But at the same time, that's not necessarily inclusive to say, well, we're going to do something bad, internally. You know what I'm saying? So I'm willing to concede that there's questions that don't have answers, but there's questions that don't have answers about all of these. I mean, some of what you're talking about could be said about Pearl Harbor in 1941. Yeah. Some of what you're talking about could be said of the John F. Kennedy assassination, or certainly the Roswell event in 1947. I mean, you look at any of this and you can say, okay, there's reasonable doubt. I mean, that's what drives a conspiracy, isn't it? Or a theory.
Yeah, this is it. And they say, even in court cases, they say, find them or her not guilty if you've got reasonable doubt. Find them not guilty. You've got to have all the proof there.
I think in a lot of these other cases, like Pearl Harbor, there's no question about science in those things. We saw, you could see planes doing what planes do. You saw ships sinking with what they do when they're bombed. You saw all those things. The conspiracies around that are what was behind it. Was it a false flag event? Was it deliberate? Was were there collusion? It's all that emotional, political stuff behind those theories. The 9/11 thing was a very, very different one for me. There was huge amounts of scientific evidence to be looked at, where you would doubt that scientifically what you saw could happen in any way other than some kind of preparation, by people in the United States to make those things happen the way they did. So you see what I'm saying there, David? I think it's a different kind of conspiracy theory. It's where I'm coming from. It's based not on emotion or politics. It's based on scientific evidence.
Well, sure, and I was talking more to what Frank was saying, CIA agent. But so let me ask you something, because this is something that I think about quite a bit. As faculty, even for a little college like I'm at, and that is how you're an engineer. Okay, so you have training background. You look, you say, okay, that doesn't look right. I mean, I'm sure watching action films with you is a ton of fun, but
how did you guess that? My daughter sat here and she's chuckling here.
But how does somebody who's not an engineer? I mean, I keep drifting towards the social and the political, I guess, because I'm an historian and that's what I do. Yeah. But how do you get somebody to know enough? I mean, high school physics is not going to get you there.
Actually, high school physics probably would, with a little bit of knowledge of what goes on in the field of demolition, if you like. So, for example, anyone can watch the videos and anyone can see that there's, at one point, and this is only one little piece of physical evidence, by the way, so I wouldn't base the entire view on this one piece, but it's one of many pieces which, when you put them together, makes the question. You can look at, I think it was WTC2, just before it fell, lots and lots of what looked like melted steel pouring out of floor windows. You see these look like lava flows coming out. That would not happen from just overheating steel frames from the fire. Although the fire would be hot from petroleum, it would not cause lava flows to come out of windows. Those lava flows were consistent with, and again, I don't know enough about demolition, but it was consistent with one of the major ways of bringing buildings down, and that is thermite. Thermite does that.
Is this new fandangled thing that melts steel?
No, it's not new. It's been around for a long time. But it has a small detonation, which then turns into a huge conflagration, very very hot. Melts the steel and pours out of windows.
I just wanted to add something at this point about buildings and conspiracy theories. I just had this. Bruce Willis was in that film Die Hard, and the building he was in, there was quite a few explosions. And I just wondered if you had any theories about that, Ed, because you've seen it, haven't you? Did you watch that with him, Laura?
I reckon actually
that building didn't come down.
David would agree that
there was tons of stuff went off in that building, and it didn't come down.
Well,
David would agree,
but
Willis was actually in World Trade Center 1 and saved a lot of people.
Well, listen. Mike Carter, he's just sent a message in. He said, and this fella knows, by the way, he's like you, and he said, like you, Ed, I'm sorry. He said, steel melts at 2,000 degrees. Jet fuel is 1,200. So he knows the stuff.
But the jet fuel fire would weaken the frame, would weaken the steel.
Well, listen. I'm sorry, we've run out of time, unfortunately, David.
Yeah.
I'm awfully sorry. I don't know what to say. You've been such a wonderful guest as usual. So next month, what we're actually going to talk about, and I'd love you to do this. Have you got a pen and paper?
Yeah, you bet. Go ahead.
Okay. And what it is, I'd like you to read as much as you can. It's a book, and it's called The Bisley Boy. Bisley. Bisley Boy, B-O-Y. Okay, The Bisley Boy, and it's by Christine Hunt. Okay, so try and read as much as that for next month, because this is all about the lovely theory of Elizabeth I. Was Elizabeth I a man? So I'll give you some idea of what we'll be talking about next time. Is that okay with you?
That sounds great. I want to ask one more question real quick before we go, though. I don't know where you went to school, Mr. Gilchrist, but I didn't get to play with thermite in my high school. I mean, I don't know. That's just...
you want to come to Cambridge? Oh, you want to go to Cambridge?
I realised what I did there, David, and you're dead right to pick me up. I was trying to simplify it to saying common sense, and then I mentioned thermite. How stupid is that? I've never played with thermite. I've never been involved in demolition, so... but I do know by reading things. So the question is, how did normal people know this stuff? And normal people would not.
Yeah.
People who've not done some sort of scientific degree or whatever would probably want to take the story,
I know we got to go, but it just reminds me of Socrates in the allegory of the cave. I mean, you get the Enlightenment, you got to take it back in, but you're going to get it ridiculed.
Yeah.
You bring that knowledge in. So, I can't wait for next time. This was a lot of fun.
Well, thank you. And I'll just leave you with this. And it says scientists have an answer for everything.
Well, they don't.
Well, this is what I'm only quoting. Don't be saying.
I'm with you, David.
It's not me, but that's what they say. Scientists never. But I think they're trying to take the Michael, as we say, by saying that anyway. But I'm glad you said. I didn't see the way you got excited. No, they don't.
You got wound up quite well.
So you got too excited there, David. Absolutely wonderful.
I know too many scientists here.
Yeah. We're just historians anyway, and rock players, and this is a mad get together. But it's been absolutely wonderful, enthralling, and very, very good. And the listeners are absolutely delighted. They're sending in the messages now. So until next month.
Absolutely, my friend.
Thank you so much, and don't forget the Bisley Boy. Christine Hunt, and try and read as much as you want, okay?
Right, because Frank is adamant about Elizabeth having an Adam's apple.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Adamant about Adam's apples.
Yeah. I'm very hirsute, and a male pattern baldness, and 6'1", and big feet.
Shut up, Frank.
And, anyway, it's just one of those things. I spoke with a gruff voice, and had no breasts. Anyway...
have you seen them?
And the artists were made. All the artists who painted them were ordered, coerced into making her look feminine.
All right, mate. Elizabeth the First here.
Yeah, we shall sit there.
I'm just thinking a Doctor Who moment here. Okay, so we better sign off.
I know.
Yeah, you're right.
Anyway, thanks very much,
David.
Thank you.
All right, cheers.
Bye.
See you, David.
Isn't that absolutely wonderful? What do you think of that? Isn't he great? Honestly? But, he, like next month, as I said, so what we'll do, can we, I know that we've got a couple of songs, we've got a couple of songs to play now. Let's Dance by Chris Montez. Hey, baby, want to take a chance? And then, I want to break free. Right, got that coming up. And after that, we've got Ayshea Brough.
What key was that in, Frank?
Well,
what key was that one in?
Here we go. Here we go. Do you know what? Do these have to come in, Jason? Anyway, here, Billy Kinsley and Mike Pender. I gave a little rendition once, and he went, "That's brilliant, that."
To Mike Pender?
Yeah. From the churches.
You sang a song?
I sang, I only sang a few bars, didn't I? What are you looking at me like that for, Jason? Oh, okay. Anyway,
Frank, you took a wrong turn out the iron door, didn't you? You became a historian, didn't you?
Oh, God, there we go. Anyway, here's Let's Dance by Chris Montez and I Want to Break Free by Queen.
The best in 60s and 70s music, plus a little bit of history. Tune into Frank Carlyle every Monday at 8 p.m. here, only on Mersey Radio.
Wasn't that absolutely wonderful? Well, we had a great first hour with all this particular conspiracy theory and about 9/11, really. And someone said, sent in a message saying, that was a great thing. What do you call it? Something pre. And I said, preamble, you mean? And he said, yeah, well, whatever it is, it was great. And, can we have more of this history, please? So I said, no. Anyway, that's right away. Because The likes of Laura, say a couple of words to the listeners, because they said I thought there was some.
There was another one there.
So gay,
I'm the listener. I'm just actively listening, taking it all in. But,
isn't that lovely? At least, I'd say Paul. She doesn't stop in the band, does she?
No, she doesn't. But we were talking about theories before, and Laura does have a theory about a brontosaurus. Tell us what that is. Tell us what that is, Laura.
To embarrass you now.
I'm not quoting my source, but it's supposed to be thin at one end, thick in the middle, and thin at the other.
Oh, that is excellent.
See that?
Yeah.
I think
think on that. Think on that.
A brontosaurus. Is it a brontosaurus rex? No.
They were called brontosaurus rats.
Oh.
That was the pet name for them.
Right.
Have you got one of them at home?
Used to. And I had a pterodactyl as well. That used to come into the
terrible
bedroom.
for soiling the cages, them, aren't they?
I know.
Wasn't it?
But you get rid of them, you see. Anyway, that's why I'm on my own.
I think they've been renamed pterodons now. They some point, because we all knew them as
Political correctness.
Gentlemen of a certain age knew them as pterodactyls, but they're now called pterodons, except you don't pronounce the P.
Yeah, and there was a great TV animation series by the Andersons.
Oh yeah.
And it was called The Terrorhawks.
Yeah.
Did you ever watch that?
Yeah. I did.
Yeah. Just brilliant.
Yeah. But anyway,
Beaten by UFO and stuff.
Can I just mention a few people here? Because we have a girl named, what's her name? Hang on. No, I'm only kidding.
Smooth that, Frank, smooth.
No, but she's listening now. That's Vanessa Sharples, and it's her birthday tomorrow. It's her birthday.
Vanessa.
So it's Vanessa Sharples' birthday tomorrow. Alan, we've got another fella, Alan Hodgson. He listens in. Besides Mark Kinnish, can you say hello to?
Hi, Mark.
Can you say it?
Hi, Mark.
Hello, Mark.
Isn't that lovely? He'd be made up at that because he thinks the amazing Kappa bands is absolutely brilliant. Not much about the singer, but it's the two females, the drummer,
the two pterodons.
Yeah.
Well, what's happening is I'm actually a bit like Doctor Who. I'm replacing myself with Dolly Parton.
Oh, it's terrible. Anyway, I've just got to mention Andy Gamble as well. Now, Andy's down at Minehead, and he's playing at Butlands, and it's searching, and he's just said it's just brilliant, and he said some brilliant news, searching news confirmed today. We'll let you know once it's out the bag, but again, we are privileged and honoured. 2017 has been a brilliant year for the bands. Let's see what happens in 2018, see what that's to offer as well. So well done to Andy, and keep searching.
That's well done, Andy.
Yeah, the Searchers tribute.
Yeah, they're absolutely. Well, you have met them, haven't you? With
played the Scouts tribute nights.
Yeah, the Scouts tribute nights, which is phenomenal. To be honest. Anyway, what we're going to do, Laura, lovely Laura,
Frank.
and what we're going to do, Ed, and the other fella there sitting next to me, he keeps looking at me with these funny looks. No, Mr. Kappa, Paul Kappa.
Shooting
I'm
the
lovely
daggers.
too, Frank. In my own little way.
He's jealous. See, exactly. Now I'm facing Ed Gilchrist, and Ed's just sitting there in a new T-shirt, and it's got the great Liverpool emblem on, LFC, Liverpool Football Club, and that's great.
That looks new on that, Ed.
It's quite new this year.
It's
actually navy blue. Can you believe it's a navy blue T-shirt?
No, I didn't. I thought it was black. I thought it was black.
What do you say?
Oh, yeah. Controversial.
Looks black. Anyway, I'm going right over. This girl is absolutely wonderful, and I fell in love with her the first time I ever seen her on the telly, and I went, oh, and I just looked, and nothing at all, just I couldn't think of anything, and even my mum used to say, Francis, here's your tea. What? Francis is every week. Anyway, I'm going right over to the lovely and the wonderful Ayshea Brough. Hello, Ayshea.
Hello, my love. How are you?
Oh, I'm fine.
He's melting.
I know, I've just melted away here, it's absolutely wonderful.
Come on, Jason.
I don't know what to say. Anyway, Ayshea, we've been speaking about, conspiracy theories. We was talking about the 9/11. Now, you appeared in UFO in that series, and to me, UFO, that was a very expensive series to make, simply because
it was.
They had outside location, costumes.
They shot it on film, and they spared no expense. It was like it felt, for me, the same as when I've done a movie. The budget, nobody was sort of saying, "Oh no, we can't have that because it'd be too expensive." They spent money on hydraulic doors, into Ed Straker's office, and the costumes were unbelievable.
Yeah, that's
the
right.
boots were all proper leather, and they really did a great job.
Did you know the costumes itself, Ayshea? Did you actually get measured for them? And the fellas' suits as well?
Yeah, they well, when I did the screen test, they picked very sort of Amazonian girls. Gabriella, Dolores, they were all like 5'9", 5'10",
really?
and I'm not. And when I went to put on, they had some costumes for the screen test, and instead of being like 6 inches above my knee, they were like evening dresses on me. So I stuffed my bra with my socks.
Oh, go away!
You've just spoiled his image now.
I did. So that the dress would be a bit shorter for the screen test, but then after that, then they made everything made to measure. But in one of the screen tests, I've got like a 40-inch bust because I've got a pair of big woolly socks.
Have you any idea what the episodes was called? Because I'll get that. I'm going to buy the series. I'm going to get it on DVD. I must get that one. Listen, Ed Gilchrist, who was here, he's an ex-Cambridge lad, and he was at school with Gabriella Drake's. Yeah, and he's
not with her, with their brother.
Bro, that's what I was just going to say. He never finishes. He never lets me finish. But he was at school with Nick. But Nick, he was a singer. See what I mean?
Oh,
so, have you got anything to say to
How is Gabriella these days?
Well, I don't know Gabriella, unfortunately. I only knew her brother.
Yeah. Are you still friends with him?
What Frank was getting at all confused. He's just needs to calm down. Have a cup of tea, Frank. It was Nick. So I never actually met Gabrielle except when she came to visit him once while I was in college. So I didn't really meet her. But yeah, unfortunately, he died before the series, didn't he?
No.
Who did?
I don't think he did.
1976.
No, it was done before 1976.
Was the UFO before 76? Was it?
I think
Couldn't
so.
hear you then.
So he was UFO before 76?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So he was still alive then.
70. We started in 70.
2 was it? 73.
About 70.
Yeah.
About 70,
Really?
I think.
Yeah.
71.
Yeah, so he was still around. Yeah, that's my only claim to fame there.
Well, again, when you met these people, do you know when you got the part? How did you feel? Did you feel like as though you've broken in and you've made it to all right? It was the small screen.
No, it was different because I'd already got my own series. I'd already got Liftoff.
Yeah, that's what I mean. But I mean in the acting, profession.
That was great because I was determined to. Though I did drama and everything at school, I really wanted to be a pop singer and to sing. And I think that getting a record deal, that was the first big step. Because, the extraordinary thing is when you're really, really young and you have these great dreams, now, as you get older, you have limitations and you think, well, maybe I won't get this. When you're really young, you just think, oh, well, I'll be a pop singer and I'll get a record deal. And you just think it's so easy, and sometimes you're lucky and it happens.
Yeah.
So when I got the deal, I thought, okay, I'm on my way. And then when I got the series, I thought, oh, well, that's really good because now I'll be on TV every week. And I don't think you realize when you're really young, how lucky you are. I mean, I was 18 years old.
Yeah.
I'd been a year out of school, so I hadn't exactly had a hard time getting a job.
No. No. Well, listen, do you know where you made your name really was Liftoff? Well, Ayshea, was it Ayshea that Liftoff or Liftoff with Ayshea?
It was Liftoff with, you always call me Ayshea, it's Ayshea. It started off, I did a show called Discotheque. That's the one that I guested on. And then they actually fired the girl that was the hostess and hired me. And then they gave me a show called Liftoff, and then they made it Liftoff with Ayshea. Yeah. I stayed with Granada for nearly, I think it was 10 years.
Yeah, that's right, Ayshea, because did you like the way you got your name right there, correct? And it's just that, it's funny, isn't it? People are shaking their heads at me.
Disbelief.
Disbelief,
I answer to Ashley, Asha, Ayesha, Aisha. It's okay. It would have been a lot easier if my mother had spelt it Isher. Would have made life a lot easier.
Well, listen, because before you became Brough, you had another name, and I'm sure it was
Brough
an exotic
was my married name.
Yeah, I know, but what was you was known before you became...
Hague. I was born with the name Hague. Hague.
Ayshea Hague. That's right. That's
what I was at school. And then I married Peter Brough's son, Christopher Brough, who was at the time in partnership with Mike Hurst. Oh. And they were producing Cat Stevens.
Really? Cat? Yeah. Listen, because you had some, and Liftoff with Ayshea. You had some fantastic guests, didn't you? You had the big names at the time.
Yeah, well, we were lucky. It was on early, but basically, like Top of the Pops, we had somebody in the top three, we had a new release, we had somebody established. There was always like Sweet and Slade, whatever the big bands were then. They always did their new releases on Top of the Pops and Liftoff. And Liftoff was on a Wednesday. And I think Top of the Pops was on Friday. So we used to get the brand new release earlier.
Yeah. Well, that's the beauty of, stardom, shall I say, because what I was told, and I'm going back years ago, was that they were just clamouring to get on your show because you had the likes of Cathy McGowan, didn't you, as well? They were all going around the same time.
She was quite a bit before me. She was when she did. I guested. Actually, I went as a young girl at school. I went and danced in the audience of Ready, Steady, Go.
Really? Did you ever think at the time, you did that?
No. I just thought. I watched Cathy McGowan. I knew I wanted to be a singer. But I never thought that I would actually, host a show as well. And it was so funny. The world was so much smaller then. Cathy McGowan's boyfriend was a guy called Leslie, who was a hairdresser, and he cut and styled my hair for the show when I did it. It's such a small world.
Wow. That is a small world. Very coincidental, really.
See, London was sort of... Everything revolved around... Carnaby Street, and so the world was so certain hairdressers. Everybody shopped at the same shops, and I don't know. It was far more intimate then than it is now.
You had the big names, didn't you? You had the likes of Twiggy, Vidal Sassoon.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah,
it's so spread out now. So as a youngster, you saw Cathy McGowan had her hair done at a salon called Leonard's, and that a guy called Leslie did it. So the minute you got a record deal, you went to that hairdresser's, and it's funny. It's very sweet when you look back on it. We just followed like little sheep.
Well, this is it, but, albeit that you followed like little sheep, something came at the end of it, didn't it? Something was there for some people. I think Ed wants to ask you something.
Yeah.
So I'm just thinking, I don't know whether Frank was going to ask you, but what have you been doing the last 10 years or so?
Yeah, I was going to...
Oh, he was going to come to that, I guess. So I'm interested in what people do when they finish in the big things like UFO and your own show and so on, and you've done some films, haven't you? Have you done anything you've enjoyed recently?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you then.
Have you done anything you really enjoyed to do recently?
All I've done, without being a downer, my mother had a stroke 4 years ago,
Oh.
and so I basically had to put work on hold. I wouldn't go anywhere for more than a day, and I had a couple of plays that were offered to me, which I would love to have done, but I just couldn't commit to doing any sort of a run. So what I've done, really, for the last few years, is I've just done conventions. So I can go and I can meet people and I can sign autographs and still feel like I'm working, but I could do it in a day and I didn't have to be away. I mean, the furthest I've gone is to like Rotterdam, you know, and I can be back in a day but that's it. But unfortunately my mother has passed, and so now I will go back to work.
Well, do you know, like, did you write anything? Have you written something, you know, a book or what?
Did I what?
Have you written something? Have you written a book or anything?
I'm in the middle. David Howe, who you know,
yes,
is in the middle of. It's not a biography; it's really a photography.
Oh, great.
We're putting together a book, basically all photographs with some anecdotes. And he's.
Is this like going back? Is this like going back to your early days? The likes of
it goes from basically the beginning of the recording.
Oh, that's great.
And they're all photographs and some little anecdotes, and I think he's halfway through. And then when we've done that, then now I have the time. I would like to write a biography, but really about what the music industry was like then, because I don't think the great bands and successful artists that we have today really have any idea of how small and intimate it was. I mean, when you see people like Taylor Swift and Beyonce, fantastic, and with the social media and everything they do, but it's so vast and it's not as intimate. Everybody started in little clubs, and you built up a fan following, and then if you got a record deal, the fans were so happy for you and you started doing concerts. But, you know, in the middle of your sets, you'd come down, you'd have a drink with the fans. It was so different. Now the fans are like, 300 feet away, and it's 25,000 people in a stadium.
So the intimacy's gone. So the intimacy's gone. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, if you're really interested in making music, rather than just doing a performance and having a commercial enterprise, that's a very important part of the work that has gone, because that intimacy, when you're doing well and you get the response then and there, not screaming and because they paid £300 for a ticket, but they're right there 2 feet away from you and you've done something right, it improves you as an artist. It's not that they're not fabulous today and they're not doing all the work, but they're in classes, they're taking this lesson, that lesson. It just is a whole different world. The pop industry was so much part of youth and belonged to the youth. It doesn't anymore.
Well,
it's corporate.
Yeah, well, that's a strange concoction, that, because, when I used to watch you on, Lift Off with Ayshea, it was so intimate. Even the old Top of the Pops, when you see that. Even the Cathy McGowan thing,
Yes,
even the
course.
Beat Club.
But that's because everybody was actually friends, and the industry was so small. Everybody went to see everybody else work.
That's right.
Everybody went to when you finished your show, you looked to see who was within 20 miles that you could go and watch and support.
That's right,
not to make an appearance, so that you get your photograph taken. You went to support the other artists because you all came up the same way.
That's right, Ayshea, because the likes of the Beatles, for example, when they were saying all you need is love, you had Mick Jagger in, or a few others, they went so long just to record.
Everybody wanted to go to the studio and be part of like a nightclub experience. That wouldn't be the same if you did that in an arena. I mean, look at the Beatles at the Cavern. Think about that world where Scylla was a hat-check girl and then got a chance to sing with the big three, and that's the world, the pop world that I was in.
Well, listen,
it was beautiful.
Well, right next to me, I've got Paul Kappa, and he's in a band, and believe it or not, they come from all over the world, so they're saying Japan, Germany, States, you name it, and he's a massive name over in the States, massive here as well, here on Merseyside, and he could say a thing about the intimacy of the cavern because he's a resident. He's a resident there now. So, Paul.
Hello, Ayshea. It's Paul here. I think Frank might be overstating that we're a massive band. We're rather more about what you're talking about, the intimacy of playing, because we haven't achieved that kind of success. I'm not even sure that the music business as it stands now takes artists like us who are rather more old-fashioned. I mean, we do sing and play our instruments. And I have a band, and we've got sitting opposite me. We've got a drummer who's Laura, who's a young lady, and I've also got a female bass player. We've got an unusual setup in our band. It's great. In fact, it's only really me ruining the female experience. But it's my band.
It's all right. They're going to get rid of you soon.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think they're going to replace me with Dolly Parton.
They bought him a dress.
Well, anyway,
I just wanted to agree with you wholeheartedly about the intimacy, the idea. I mean, I've played on stage in small venues. I've also played at Glastonbury. In the idea that you're playing to people, and past the first few rows, you just can't see the people you're playing to, and you can't connect to them. And I entirely agree about how artists have to.
I must say, Glastonbury, at least festivals, that there is that feeling of, rather than just paying to come and see a band, that they're part of something. It's just there's a little piece missing when it's just concert and playing to a sea of faces.
That's right.
I think they miss out on something.
Festivals are music lovers generally. That's why they've gone. But I think you're right that the arena circuit seems to be rather corporate.
I mean, it's lovely to do as an artist, because if I've done any theatre, whether it was pantomime or it was concert work, it's wonderful because you've got great sound, you've got great lights, you can really put a performance on, but it bears no relevance to what I think of as, sort of being in a band and singing. That's a whole different thing.
Well, you're very passionate what you're actually saying there, and you feel as though, what you're trying to say, you feel as though there's a big lost opportunity in today's world of music. Am I right there?
I think it is. And the strange thing is, I thought that it would always continue in local little towns, that you would always have, a little local band and they get a following. But now with the advent of, iTunes and the fact that people, they don't even go to clubs to watch a band. I mean, I can remember the Dave Clark Five was made famous by playing at the Tottenham Royal. Yeah. By being, going there, and people went to dance to it, and that built it. I mean, it doesn't. Guns N' Roses was the last band. I was living in LA. Was the last band that I remember that had a following, and from that became very successful and got their record deal. That was the last one I remember. Wow. Now it's straight into the studio or straight onto X Factor. There's a whole piece missing.
Yeah,
there is. I just want to say, Ayshea, you sound like, for all the things that you've done, you still sound like you're very passionate about your music, as if that's really your first love. That's what it sounds like to me.
Yeah. And, if I hadn't have been a singer, I went to every club anyway. That was my life from about 14. I loved it.
I would say to you, you should come to the Cavern Club in Liverpool, where we play every week. We played it's no different than it was in the 1960s. We're just
Is it really? Is it really still going?
It's absolutely packed out every week. We play to a big.
I've got to come and see it.
Big crowds. We have a big following, and you'd be more than welcome if you ever wanted to do something like that. Go back to your roots and just experience that. You should come and do it.
Oh, I will. I'll come and see. Oh, I think that
and
would be lovely.
And get up on stage and give a song.
Yeah, get up on stage and collapse.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll catch you. They're a great band.
I'll give you mouth to mouth, so don't be worrying about collapsing. Definitely see that. So,
if you wanted to, Ayshea,
I haven't
we'd
sung
make that
in
happen
public
for you.
for a long time. Acting, yes.
Honestly, Ayshea, it's been absolutely wonderful. And our head of Mersey Radio, Matty Aarons, he said, he loved UFO. And he loved you as well. Not as much as me, though. You know, I've got to say that. Not as much as me. But Ayshea, please, you know, is there any chance that you could come on again? Could you be a regular? Laura wants to say something. Laura's a member of the amazing Kappa bands. You've just been talking to Paul, and she's the drummer. She's the drummer. Yeah. She wants to say something.
Hi, Ayshea. Sorry, I was just going to jump in really quickly. I was just going to highlight what Paul just said a second ago about coming down to the cavern. We do Wednesdays and Saturdays. Little plug.
I can hardly hear you, Laura. Did you come down to the cavern?
Yeah, we do Wednesdays and Saturdays in the pub, which is like a little
really
one of those.
I'm going away for a bit of a break in September, and then when I come back, maybe October, November, I will nip up to Liverpool and come and see you guys.
Oh, that would be absolutely wonderful. But you'll have to come on the show before you're coming up. Is that okay with you?
I don't know. I don't know about that. I found new friends now.
Snubbed.
Hey, Frank, you can hang around with us if you want.
That's the end of the month tomorrow.
I got to stick with my girls in the band, honey.
Absolutely. Ayshea, it's been absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, not at all. It was lovely to talk to you guys. You have a wonderful evening, and I'll speak to you and see you soon.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ayshea.
Thanks so much.
Take care, my love. Take care. Bye-bye. Bye.
Oh, that's it now. I've gone all... My legs are like jelly, and I'm sitting down. My legs are like jelly. Anyway,
you're sitting down.
What we're going to do, we're going over to our Hollywood correspondent in 2 more minutes. So, what you think? I never even asked her about, whether she believed in UFOs. You know what?
I know, you're starstruck, aren't you, really?
Yeah. What was interesting, Frank, was that she was leading the conversation all the time towards music and what she thought about that. Music. I think that's what she wanted to talk about.
Well, but that's what we did.
And we did.
Yeah, I love that. You have to go on a Facebook page and give her a formal invitation.
She might not do social media because it might be corporate.
Twitter.
A letter. Write a letter.
There
you go. Old school.
Jason will sort all that.
Write it on airmail.
That'd be lovely.
Paper.
That'd be just lovely, that.
Yeah, that'll be lovely.
And I think you're right. The cavern, the pub and the club are just like they were. And you know what she was describing as the world being a small place in terms of music 50 years or 40
but she'd love
years ago.
Yeah. It's like that.
Liverpool's like that now.
Yeah.
Liverpool music scene is fantastic.
Everyone shows up at each other's gigs the way they used to in the 60s and 70s.
Well, anyway, what we're going to do, lads, we're going straight over to Jo Whitaker, who's our Hollywood correspondent, and she's waiting for us now. Good evening and good afternoon to you there, Jo.
Hello to you too.
Oh, not wonderful. You're coming along loud and clear, everything else. And what's been happening today, Jo?
Nothing much. Just a nice and easy weekend.
Oh, yeah.
It's too hot to go out.
Isn't that strange, because we've had beautiful weather for the past couple of days here in sunny Liverpool, as they call it now. So... did you ever watch Doctor Who?
I did when I lived in the UK.
Okay, well...
It's a female, huh?
Yeah, that's right. I was just going to tell. I thought I was going to give you a bit of news. Anyway...
please give me some news about a new Doctor Who.
And her name is Jodie Whittaker. It's no relation to you, is she, Jo? It's not you, is it?
She's stunned now.
No.
She's still,
No,
anyway, we've been...
Conspiracy.
Yeah, exactly. That's the conspiracy. We've been speaking about conspiracy theories, especially 9/11. And what do the Americans, albeit that we had an American professor on talking about her, what's the ordinary Americans, what do they think of, obviously 9/11? Do they think it was a conspiracy by their own government to crash planes in? Or... Do you think,
I think the smart ones do.
Yeah.
It's a complete set-up for other reasons, oil and all the rest of it.
Yeah. It's strange. It's a strange one, isn't it? It's like UFOs. People say especially in this country, in Russia, in France, everywhere, all around the globe, that there's government cover-ups over UFOs, for example. Am I right?
Yeah, like Area 51, and they didn't even acknowledge that it existed till a few years ago, right?
That's right. I always remember I was lost in Germany, believe it or not, and I was coming a lift. Anyway, I got a lift, and it was an American, and he had long hair, beard, and he was in the USAF, and I said, "How come you're in the USAF if you've got a long beard and long hair?" And he said, "I go after AWOLs," and we got talking. And he was dropping me off at a place called Stuttgart, and he said, and he mentions, and I'm going back to 1981, and he said to me, "Do you know what?" He said, "We have a place somewhere in Arizona, and it's secret." He said, "And let me tell you," he said, "do you believe in UFOs?" And I went, I don't know, it's hard for me to... I've got an open mind, I said. And he said, "We have 6 of them. We have 6 of them with the occupants in deep freeze." And that was the very first time that someone had said to me that. And that was Area 51, by the way, because that was in Arizona, or still is. Yeah.
Well, wasn't it an employee who blew the whistle once he retired, saying, what was going on at Area 51 and a lot of testing, and they have trying a new form of transport to enable, to get into the wormholes. I believe it all. I do believe that we do have visitors. Why not? We go out into space.
Yeah,
Why
of course.
Other people will not want to come to us.
Well, they say that, they do say that these crafts that come here are so far advanced. They're like 1,000 years ahead of us, ahead of our technology. And it's what you call, when they capture these things, it's what you call reverse engineering. They take it like a craft to pieces and then start from how they build it, in reverse, if you like. So they start building it from the basic, if let's say like a wheel or the knob of a thing, whatever it is, and that's how that's what you call reverse engineering. But it takes a very, very, very long time to achieve. But that's how we've got our technology. This is why they say. Yeah. This is what they say. Go on.
What do governments hide stuff? It's very good at, Trump's going on fake news, and he's the biggest conspiracy theorist there is at the moment in the USA.
Yeah.
Doesn't want to believe anything, but, governments have repeatedly, in time and history, have not let the big secrets out,
Yeah.
You got Princess Diana, you reckon Princess Diana taken out because she was, too much of a risk.
Yeah.
Politically, and she was
same as Marilyn Monroe. She was a risk.
Yeah, Marilyn Monroe again.
And there was a fellow by the name of Grissom. He was an astronaut, and he was going to spill the beans over something, and all of a sudden he died in mysterious circumstances. So but is it like, if they die in mysterious circumstances, is that these people who are theorists and conspiracy theorists at that try to put something together and say, well, there's the truth, believe it, and you read it, and people do tend to actually say, have you got anything to say, Ed?
All this testimony thing we talked about before, testimony is hard to actually believe one way or the other, isn't it? You'd have to know the individuals personally all of your life to have an ounce of belief that they were saying the truth, but even then it would be hard. Even people's best friends, if they're in a position where they could be threatened with their family being threatened, or themselves, or even in some cases just people concerned about the income, massive wealth being threatened, they're going to say nothing. They're going to just lie or cover up.
Yeah.
So we can't really. Testimony's hard, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, the Gus Grissom thing. It was Gus, wasn't it?
Gus Grissom.
You know, you could look at it the other way around and say to yourself, okay, so he died in mysterious circumstances, but how many people haven't died in mysterious circumstances,
but
who should have known as well?
Yeah.
You know, so we kind of look at the negatives, don't we? The ones that. It's a bit like someone saying, "I had a dream that I was in a plane crash last night. Aren't I lucky that I didn't go on that plane?" The funny thing is, thousands of people have dreams every night about being in a plane crash, and they don't end up being on a plane crash. So, you know, we pick out the ones that suit our story, our narrative. So Gus Grissom is one that fits the conspiracy narrative, isn't he?
It's anything who, you know, as you said, dying in mysterious circumstances. But it is a frightening thought when someone puts anything together. That's what the most frightening thing is.
Just say one more thing. I think that I've just put a devil's advocate view there, but I do think that people do die in suspicious circumstances. I have beliefs about a couple of the people who died during the Iraq thing.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah,
I'm very suspicious of that.
Wasn't it Harold Shipman? You know, he committed suicide, didn't he?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, sure he did.
Yeah.
Dr. David Kelly.
Yeah.
David Kelly was meant to have committed suicide.
No, definitely wasn't.
That's right. He disappeared very strangely, didn't he?
Well, his body was found in a wood with his dog.
It's not only that, he just met a person 2 minutes before. 2 minutes before he died, and he said he was just talking as though you talk ordinary. There was no anxiety. There was nothing like that.
He wasn't going to kill himself.
No, Jeff, and he said that 2 minutes before. And Michael Carter sent in a text, and he said, "I dream of us winning the league." That's Liverpool Football Club, to be honest, Joe. And you're a big Red, aren't you? Do you think that's a conspiracy theory?
It will be when we win it.
You will, but it's not like if, it's when.
Them bitter blues will all be all over the place.
Oh,
when Neymar scores 40 next season.
Yeah, whatever. And I just Mignally keeps 41 out.
Joe can't get a word in now, you know.
No, of course. I'm sorry there, Joe. We went on to football. And you're a big Red, aren't you, Joe?
Yes, of course I am.
And you went, did you ever go to see Steven Gerrard, you know, in a game?
Played here in LA Galaxy, yes.
Yeah. Steven Gerrard.
Yeah, it was fun.
Do you know when he actually left there, Joe? Was there any disappointment, that he actually went, or did he think that there was some other mileage in him to play another season or so?
No, I think there was no disappointment. I think they knew exactly how long Stephen was going to play for LA Galaxy. It's always only going to be a couple of years.
Yeah, well, this is it, you see. And he's back with Liverpool now anyway, and he's coaching the under-17s or something like that. He's going to be a future Liverpool manager, by the way. That's what he's going to be.
He did, absolutely, and why shouldn't he be? I mean, he did say that he always wanted to come back in that sort of role for Liverpool. Yeah. He said that when he left for LA, you know?
Yeah, that's right.
Good old Stevie G. Nice to hear him back in Liverpool.
Well, I've got to give it a shout out. Michael Carter said, "Would you give a shout out to the boys Justin and Jamie?" So Justin and Jamie are actually listening in, along with Michael Carter, and they're all Irish lads, by the way, but they're nice fellas, if you know what I mean. And Justin, I wonder what Justin does, you know, for the. I just wonder, you know, you don't do these particular things. Like I was talking today about Gerald de Courcy Fraser, And he's not like a fella who works down the docks, is he? Gerald, of course.
So what you mean is Justin is a name like that?
Justin is a name like that. He could be an architect. He could be a high flyer somewhere, So, Justin and Jamie, the two J's, thanks for listening in, and we respect you there. Well, Gerald's of course Fraser. Shall I tell you what he was?
What was that?
I'll tell you what he was, Paul. Paul was going to sleep. He was a great architect, and I could show you the buildings in Liverpool there. Do you know the one on the corner of Hanover Street and Church Street? Hey, you know where it goes in half and it goes down? It's called the Flatiron. The Flatiron building that the New Yorkers copied. Right? Well, he built that. He designed that.
So they copied it?
Oh, of course they did.
I know that.
Well, there you go. Well, they copy a lot of things off us.
Well, I mean, Scouse has invented architecture. That's a fact, isn't it?
Well, that's it. Forget the aliens and the pyramids.
Yeah.
Scousers of us.
I mean, right? And even our own Beatle, Paul McCartney, the conspiracy is he died in 1966.
Yeah, I don't know, but he's going around well anyway. He's hung him up. Joe, I'm awfully sorry, but we've got to leave it now. I'm awfully sorry. And we'll see you next week. The three of us, or the four of us, will see you next week. Is that okay?
You guys,
Well, Joe, thank you, and Laura's going to say thank you and good night.
Thank you and good night, Joe.
And I'll repeat, thank you and good night, Joe. Great to hear from you.
Thanks, Joe. Good night, Paul here.
It's Frank. Thank you, Joe, and I'll see you next week. Anyway, that's it, What about that? Joe, she's a lovely person, isn't she? But unfortunately, she must have been walking around with a phone, mustn't she? Whatever it was. Anyway, this is Frank Carlyle, and I'm signing off now with for Mersey Radio. Thanks to all my listeners, and I never mentioned Mark Kinnish, who's sitting there, twiddling the thumbs, hoping for a mention. Anyway, Mike Carter says, answer the lifelong Reds, Jamie and Justin, Anyway, it's to Laura. I've got to say thank you so much for coming in, Laura.
It's all right.
I've got to say to Ed, thanks for coming in, Ed. And to Mr. Kappa himself, thanks, Paul.
Thanks for putting up with me, Frank.
And he didn't mention Dolly.
No, he never mentioned Dolly Parton once. Anyway, he said she should have been the new Doctor Who. Anyway, it's from me, the likes of Ayshea Brough, who I love very much, David Johnson, all the way over there. And you can catch all this again if you want on YouTube. And it's me, Frank Carlyle, and Jason Pinnington, the producer. Without him, the show wouldn't have gone ahead. And God's willing, we'll see us all next week. Thank you so much. Oh, I'll tell you who was on next week. Derek Shelmadine and Sasha Christie, and it's all about UFOs. Okay? So we'll see us all next week. Bye-bye now. Bye-bye.